So, what's the real secret to permanent happiness? I'm not talking about just a good mood for a day or two, but that deep, unshakable sense of well-being. Today, we're going to dive into the inner science of joy, and trust me, the answer is probably not what you're expecting. Let's get into it. It's funny. Over 2,000 years ago, the philosopher Aristotle figured out something totally fundamental about us. Just think about your own life for a second. Every single thing you do, from what you pick for lunch to your biggest career goals, it's all ultimately a search for happiness. It's the engine driving pretty much everything. But that brings up a massive question, right? If every single one of us is chasing the exact same thing, why do so many of us feel like we're just not getting there? Why do the things we think will make us happy so often leave us feeling kind of hollow? Well, that's exactly what we're going to get to the bottom of. Okay, so first things first, let's bust some major myths. Because it turns out, after decades of research, that the things society is constantly telling us will bring us joy, the usual suspects we're all encouraged to chase, are very often the exact things that lead us down a dead-end street. All right, first up on the list, the spotlight. We look at famous people and we think, yep, that's it. That's the top of the mountain, right? To be known, to be admired, celebrated by everyone. It really seems like the ultimate ticket to a happy life. But what's the reality actually like for them? The answer is pretty shocking. Just take John Lennon. Before he became this global icon, he said life is a wonder. But after he got a level of fame that most of us can't even wrap our heads around, his perspective totally flipped. He later said that as his ego got bigger and bigger, so did his suffering. See, fame didn't fix his problems, it just put them under a giant magnifying glass.
Okay, so if fame isn't the answer, then surely it's money, right? The huge house, the fancy car, being able to buy absolutely anything you want. This is probably the single biggest myth of them all. And it completely falls apart once you understand this one really powerful psychological principle.
And here it is. It's called the Adaptation Principle. Now, that sounds fancy, but it's something we've all experienced. We just get used to things. It doesn't matter if you win the lottery or if you lose your job. After that initial shock wears off, you pretty much always return to your regular baseline level of happiness. It's like your inner happiness thermostat just resets itself, even when the whole world around you changes. And we see this play out perfectly in studies of lottery winners. Yeah, they get this huge spike of joy, but within just a few months, they are often right back where they started emotionally. And the same is true for the opposite. People who simplify their lives often find that they're just as happy, if not happier, with a lot less. The takeaway here is so clear. Your inner world follows you no matter what your bank account looks like. So if fame is a trap and wealth is a trap, then what is the real answer? Where are we supposed to be looking for happiness that actually lasts? Well, it turns out we need to completely flip our whole perspective on this. The real key isn't about changing what's on the outside. It's all about changing what's on the inside. See, true happiness isn't something you go out and find in the world. It's something you have to build within yourself. It's an inside job. I mean, think about it this way. Your outer life is in constant motion. Your job, where you live, even your relationships, they all change. But your inner life, your habits, your thought patterns, your general mood, that stuff goes with you absolutely everywhere. The real key to lasting happiness is to get to work on that inner world. So how do we actually do this inner work? This is where it gets really, really interesting. The first key is completely backwards to how our modern world thinks. It's not about what you can get. It's all about what you can give. And the research on this is just unbelievably clear. People who are driven by their ego, always trying to take more, constantly worried about losing what they have, they tend to be unhappy. But there is one group that consistently, no matter what, reports the highest levels of happiness, and that's the givers. And we're not just talking about any old kind of giving. The most powerful kind, the kind that creates this almost magical sense of joy, is when you give silently, anonymously, and with absolutely zero expectation of getting anything back. Like paying the toll for the car behind you. It's such a small act, but it can create a feeling of happiness that literally lasts for hours. Now, the second key to lasting happiness is all about building inner strength through your own integrity. It's about living by your values, not to impress anybody else, but for yourself. Here's just an incredible example of this in action. When Mahatma Gandhi's wife was told by doctors to give up salt for her health, he made a simple, private vow to give it up too.
just to be in solidarity with her.
He kept that one private vow for 27 years. Just think about that for a second. He didn't do it for public recognition or anything like that. It was a purely personal commitment. That is what's known as conviction virtue, sticking to your principles no matter what.
And you know what the result was? It wasn't that he felt deprived or like he was missing out. Instead, that simple commitment gave him this deep, profound sense of inner strength and peace, a kind of happiness that had nothing to do with what was happening in the outside world. And if that story sounds a little extreme, just consider this quote from Nelson Mandela. Now, how on earth could a man who was unjustly thrown in prison for 27 years say that it was his happiest time? Well, it's because his happiness was never tied to his freedom.
The answer is self-respect. And I don't mean ego or pride. I'm talking about a deep sense of well-being that comes from living with integrity and truth. For Mandela, prison was actually a time of great purpose and clarity. His happiness came from a place that no prison cell could ever touch. And all of this brings us to the deepest, most fundamental source of happiness. It's not really about what we do. It's about who we are. So let's just put it all together. True, lasting happiness isn't about chasing fame or fortune. It's about doing the inner work. It's about being aware. It's about living with integrity, giving freely without expectation, respecting yourself, and connecting with that part of you that's much deeper than any job title or label. So I'll leave you with one final question to think about. We spend our entire lives building up our identities, our jobs, our names, our personal stories. But the deepest, most permanent happiness comes from connecting with the part of you that exists beyond all of that. So who are you really when you let all those labels go? The answer to that just might be the key to everything.